Hello everybody and welcome back to my YouTube channel Angie B Crafts. So today I'm going to be doing a review of these four texture pastes that I have received delivery of. Now these are the Seth Apter texture pastes made by Izink. There are 4 in the collection. They've just been released. So we have Flaky Texture, Beads Texture, Sandy Texture and Crackle Texture. So we can kind of tell what they're going to be like just by the names, but what I'm going to do is swatch each of them. I'm then going to add colour. I'm going to do 2 swatches of each. One I'm going to add colour to, and then I'm going to come back once they're dry and let you see what they're like when they're dry. So yeah, let's see how they go. So I'll do them in that order. So we'll start off with the Flaky Texture. Now I do have another Flaky Texture paste, and if it's anything like that I'm going to love this one. So it comes out very, I love the fact that they're in the tubes. So this, yeah, it's kind of got, now I can't swear what it is that's in it, but it looks like it's got chunks of almost like mica, but white mica, so it's not actually sparkly, but big chunks. You can see there's a few big pieces around. Kind of looks a little bit flaky. I quite like the look of that. Let's swatch the other side. I'll do a second swatch of that one. As I say, I'm going to colour one and not the other. Oh, I know what I could do as well. What I will do, might move this paper from underneath me, because then, oops, I can use this as a palette, can't I? So we can use this as our palette and we can add in some colour. So does it mix with colour? Let's give it a go. We will use we'll use a little bit of Dina Wakley acrylic paint. So I don't know how this is going to work. This is just something that I thought we would give a go. So obviously if you add too much fluid to something like this, you're going to get a different consistency and potentially a different effect. But that takes on the colour really nicely. It'll be interesting to see how that looks when it's dry. But that is a bit lush. A little bit lush. Oh, I like the texture you can see in it. Right, so that is the first one. Do you ever get the impression that something's going to end up getting a little bit messy? Right, get my raggy, clear off that one, because we don't want to contaminate them. And we'll give that a bit of a wipe. And then the next one is Beads Texture. Now this one I'm quite smitten by. I don't know if you can see, but you can, there's just about visible some tiny little beads through this window. This is actually a clear window, so it's a picture of what you're getting in the jar. I'll show you when I put it out. So when I put this on, it's literally got beads in it. It's like little micro beads. I love it. So it's like the stuff you get when you're exfoliating. So it adds really nice lumpy texture. We'll do a second swatch of that. I'm just thinking on this second swatch, because it'll take the colour that we put on top of it in the same way, whether it's dried naturally or heat set. So what I may do is heat set one of the swatches, and then we can see the difference between heat set and dried naturally, which is always a good comparison. Oh, I've just put the lid on that when I need it. No. Bring you back. Sorry little beads, we need you back. Oh, that was a big dollop, wasn't it? Right, let's mix it in with the colour. I'm assuming these all have the same base. I don't know that for a fact. That is just an assumption on my part. But they all have the same kind of what I would assume would be an acrylic style of base to them. As I say, I don't know that for a fact, but that is an assumption I'm making. So the colour impact should be the same on each of them. So if we add, like we've added colour to the beads, it should be a similar impact to the materials as the adding it to the other ones. Right, the next one we have is sandy texture. So as the name suggests, this is sand texture paste, but it's very, very fine. So, oh, we've got a little bit of colour on that one, but you can hear there's a grit to it. I do like sand texture paste. It's just, if you don't quite want a smooth texture, it's just nice to have that little bit of something that's sand texture paste. I've got a few different ones, but it's a nice gentle texture paste. Right, let's, oh, another big blob that was unintentional. Oops. Let's pop the paint next to it. So I'm not adding too much of the paint. I might need to add a bit more to this one purely because I put such a big blob of it out, but we shall see. We'll just get a paler colour, I guess. So it's taking the colour really well. Be interesting to see how it dries. And the other thing is, if it takes the colour this well, what you can do, I'm making this really thick, what you can do is actually get some marbly effects by not mixing the colour quite as much. You know what, there's so much left on this one. I'm going to get this mini journal and just add that onto there, because I don't want to waste it. You know, I'm loving this page. It's from the last few pieces that I've done. I've cleaned off on here and it's looking rather cool. Right, clean off my spatula or palette knife. Right, so that's the third one. And then the last one we have is Crackled Texture. So it's a one part, as in you don't add anything else to it. So it will be very, very interesting to see how this is, because the only other Crackle that I use is the Pretty Gets Gritty Get Crackled gel. Because most Crackles are two parts and I'm too lazy. So I like one part Crackles. So yeah, this is really, really smooth to go on. I'm doing kind of half of it quite thick and half of it thinner. Let's add a little bit more depth to that one on that side and take some off that side and see what the difference is. And again, I'm going to use my little journal and just add that on, because if you imagine what Crackle's going to look like on that, it'd be cool. Right, so we need a little bit of colour. Crackle comes out more like a paint, the others come out a bit more blob-like and a little bit faster. Okay, give this a mix. I'll show you what I mean by the marble effect. I'll not quite mix this one as much. Look at that. That's cool, isn't it? And that's just because you haven't mixed it. So you get the white that comes as the base of whichever of the gels you're using. I'm just going to take a bit of that off so that we've got a thinner and a thicker. There we go. I'll do it with colour. I'm back to, oh, it's here, my magic book. This is going to be the most textured page in my entire journal. Right, so that's them all laid out. What I will do now is the ones that haven't got any colour on them, so the singles, I will now blast dry and see how they look, but I'll come back to you when everything is dry and let you know how it all looks together. So I'll be back shortly. So we're back now, having let these dry. These four down here I did dry with the heat gun, so I'll go through them first and just show you them and then show you the ones that have dried naturally. So just as a reminder, we've got Flaky Texture Paste, Beads Texture Paste, Sandy Texture Paste and Crackle Texture Paste, and they're all the Izink ones. Right, so this is the Flakey. So can you see there, that's a nice shot of it, that it's got just little bits sticking up. It's quite nice the way that they stick up. I don't know if I can get a shot of that. Not really. There's a few bits that are sticking up. There you go, you can just see a few bits sticking up there, coming out. Oop, there. So I quite like the way that looks, because it's a bit more random than a sandy kind of texture paste. It's got lumps and bumps in a more random way. I quite like that one. So that's it when it was heat set. This is it when it dries naturally. So this is obviously it when we've put the paint with it, and with the paint in it, I think it looks quite good. I'm trying to get a decent shot. There we go. So you can see there it's got quite a few nice little lumps and bumps, some raised up areas. I quite like that, and this is it just dried on its own, just the white. I wouldn't say that there's any difference between the heat set and the not heat set on this one. They look pretty much the same. Now there is a very slight tackiness. It doesn't come off on you at all. It just maybe feels very, very slightly tacky, but I don't think that would be a problem. Right, so the next one's the beaded one. So the beaded one, you can see there it's got fabulous texture. This one's got some bubbles on it. As I said when I did the earlier part of the video, these are acrylic based, so when you heat them up you're going to get some bubbling, and this one I think has got, this one and the Crackle have got the most bubbling in them. I don't know what the constitutions are of each one, but this one's got some heat bubbles in it, which adds to the texture. So if you want that, that's fine. Along here it's the bubbles have popped, so we've got some of the beads, some bubbles, some pop bubbles. And if I compare that, let's do a direct comparison here. There is a slight difference. These are just the size of the beads, whereas this has got more variety to the lumps and bumps in it. So it depends again what you're after. So the heat set one, you're going to get more interest because you are going to get the expansion of the acrylic within the mixture. With this you're just going to get a layer of the white with the beads in it, and when you add colour in, I think that looks rather good actually. I quite like it with the colour in. You can see there it's got a really nice shine to it with the colour. I think that's lovely with colour added, and that's one that we've managed to get a bit of the marbling on, you can see here. So the next one is the Sand Texture Paste. We've got a little bit of bubbling gone on here, so that's got a little bit of movement because it's just got some air in it, but the actual texture paste, it's come up really, really nicely. I actually really like this as a sand texture paste. I'll show you the direct comparison. So this is the heat set, this is the dry on its own. I don't think there's that much in it. They're pretty much the same. I do like this sand texture paste though. It's got, I don't know, it just seems to have something more about it than other ones that I've used. And with the paint on it, I think it looks really, really nice. So this so far is my favourite. I like the beads, but this one is definitely my favourite. I'm not sure that I like this one. I've got another product that does something similar, and I'm just not sure that I like that. I mean, I'm sure I'll use it in pieces, but it's not my favourite. But of the three so far, this one's my favourite, followed by this one. And this is the Crackle. So this is the heat set Crackle. You got my head in there, sorry. You can see here we've got a big crack along here, and then there was another crack here, but because it was heat set, the bubbles came and covered it. So you do get some slight cracking when you heat set it, and there's some very, very tiny bits of cracking where it's thinner. On the really thin side there's no cracking at all, it's just almost dried to a flat surface. So heat set with a Crackle, which is what I anticipated, isn't really very good. Direct comparison between the two. So I don't know if you'll be able to see, there is actually Crackle on this side. Oh, there you go, you can just about see it. So there's some Crackle here. It's quite a fine Crackle, so that's the slightly thicker side, but it's still got quite, there you go, quite a fine Crackle. Whereas this one, you've not really got any, you've got a couple of big cracks and that's it. On the very, very thin layer, even on the drying on its own, if you look really close, if I squint a little bit, I can see a very, very fine Crackle. So I wouldn't put it on it as a really thin layer, but for a nice fine Crackle, yeah, it's lovely. And it's a one step, which is what I like. And then if I show it to you with the paint, this is where I think Crackle comes into its own as soon as you add colour. I mean, look at that, that's just beautiful, just there. On this side we have got some, so there's obviously some areas that are a little bit thicker, and that's really nice that you're getting some with Crackle, some without, in the white and with the purple. So I think added with colour, the Crackle is brilliant, but leave it, because if we go back to this, this has got loads of bubbles on it, and again that's just because the acrylic has bubbled up. So yeah, the Crackle I absolutely love. The sand texture I absolutely love. The beads, yeah, I think it's an unusual texture and I haven't got that in any other form, so I do like it. And this one, I'll use it, but I'm not saying it's going to be a favourite. I think when you add colour to it, it gets more interest, but it's not a favourite of mine. But it does certainly have a role to play in mixed media, and it will be on some of my pieces. So yeah, overall I think they are really, really good. The one thing that I do like about them, I used them in a project on another video, and you can actually put the texture, if you're holding, say you're holding a stencil in place, you can have your palette knife and your product, hold your stencil, squirt it on and then scrape it over, and that's a really good advantage. You're not having to undo lids and try and get in the pot. I like the fact that you can place just a little bit, so I like the fact they're in the pouches, and I do overall like them as texture paste. So nice one Izink, nice one Seth. Hopefully you found that educational. This is the piece that I kept scraping my palette knife off onto, and I actually really like the variety of texture that is on there. I don't know that that's showing up terribly well on camera, but it's wonderfully textured because it has got a little bit of everything on it. So hope you found that informative, and keep a lookout for me using them on videos. Thanks for watching. Bye.